Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating intersection where high-stakes macro geopolitics crashes head-on into cutting-edge microtechnology. If you've been tracking the year-to-date headline news trends out of Washington, especially with the incoming Trump administration, you already know the immense pressure building around trade. We're going to unpack the current USMCA tariff threats, the escalating political friction between Washington and Ontario, and specifically how this impacts a massive, highly sensitive supply chain. I'm talking about municipal solid waste, or MSW, being shipped straight from Ontario, Canada, right across the border to U.S. landfills in Michigan. But hey, we're not just here to admire the problem. We're going to explore a highly advanced edge AI solution that is quite literally redefining international compliance. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. We're covering the USMCA trade precipice, the Ontario-Michigan waste corridor, 905 wood, the sentient bridge, the Pixel 10 Pro AI stack, the digital refinery compliance workflow, and finally, the circular bioeconomy future. Let's get to it. Section 1. The USMCA trade precipice. So as we approach the July 2026 CUSMA or USMCA sunset clause, the regulatory volatility between Washington and Ontario is just skyrocketing. This is a massive checkpoint where the US, Canada, and Mexico have to formally extend the agreement. And because of that, the threat of protectionist tariffs and retaliatory surcharges is hanging incredibly heavy over cross-border industrial supply chains. Reacting to the US Supreme Court ruling that struck down previous broad-based global tariffs, Ontario Premier Doug Ford said, quote, "The walls are closing in." He was directly warning against a rush trade deal, highlighting the intense, localized pressure on Canada's economy. And regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, that quote perfectly captures the absolute high alert status of cross-border trade operators right now. This timeline really lays out the ticking clock we are dealing with. In February 2026, the Supreme Court strikes down those global tariffs. Fast forward to April, and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney forms the Economic Relations Committee to brace for the looming joint review. By June, Canada officially recommends a 16-year CUSMA extension. But then, the real inflection point hits in July 2026. The U.S. declines to extend the treaty for that 16-year block, which forces it into a regime of mandatory annual joint reviews. For cross-border logistics, that introduces a massive layer of uncertainty into any sort of long-term infrastructure planning. Section 2. The Ontario-Michigan Waste Corridor. So how does all that political friction threaten actual physical infrastructure? Well, think about this number, 3.46 million tons. That is the staggering volume of municipal solid waste shipped from Ontario directly into Michigan landfills every single year. It's one of the most physically integrated, yet politically volatile transboundary waste corridors in North America. And it's largely driven by Ontario's rapidly depleting domestic landfill capacity, paired with historically favorable disposal economics in the American Midwest. Now, what's really interesting here is the deep structural dependency. Michigan imports 3.46 million tons of trash from Ontario annually, right? To put that into perspective, that accounts for 14.35% of all waste disposed of in Michigan landfills. It is a severe vulnerability. Because of the bilateral trade friction we just talked about, this entire pipeline is suddenly exposed to sudden unilateral border closures and aggressive regulatory surcharges. And this is where the economics threaten to just totally collapse. Michigan's Governor Whitmer proposed a massive spike in the state surcharge on landfilling waste. We are talking about a jump from a mere 36 cents per ton all the way up to $5 per ton. That essentially acts as a severe domestic tariff. It threatens to destroy Ontario's disposal economics entirely, creating this incredibly urgent need for an audited, frictionless, and highly efficient system just to survive these new costs. Section 3. 905 wood. The sentient bridge. So how do we pivot to a localized technological solution? The answer is something being called the sentient bridge. Basically, this is the technical and digital infrastructure connecting chaotic construction waste to the really strict high-purity requirements of the pyrogenic biocarbon market. Designed by the 905 wood Digital Refinery, it's a workflow that completely transforms a transboundary liability, hauling trash across a hostile border, into a high-value, verified environmental asset. To really get why this is a game changer, let's contrast the two paradigms. The legacy border system relies on archaic visual checks looking for suspicious leaks and old-school paper manifests. It is entirely vulnerable to trade tariffs and massive customs delays. The 905 Wood standard, however, uses sensor-based sourcing, API-linked traceability, and a framework they call explainable compliance. It basically builds a digital, tariff-proof shield by proving exactly what is in every single shipment long before it ever reaches the border. Section 4. Pixel 10 Pro AI Stack. To truly understand how they actually pull this off, we have to zoom all the way in to the literal edge. To achieve this explainable compliance that can seamlessly withstand strict U.S. customs audits, the technology has to start right at the point of collection, literally at the dumpster. 905 Wood operationalizes the Google Pixel 10 Pro, utilizing the Android 16 Lite RT AI stack. This isn't happening in some distant cloud server farm. This intelligence is happening right there in the yard. And the specific features under the hood are incredible. The Pixel 10 Pro runs a Gemma 4e2b AI model that handles binary classification in under 500 milliseconds, so it instantly evaluates a load and classifies clean versus treated wood. If its confidence level drops below 85%, an E4B visual fallacy guard kicks in to provide dual model consensus. If there is still any ambiguity after that, the load is rejected outright. It applies the precautionary principle before a truck is ever even loaded, guaranteeing a high-purity feedstock. Section 5. Digital Refinery Compliance Workflow. Let's move along and see how this localized AI data builds into the broader digital refinery application workflow. First up, you have the AI-driven request for quote, or RFQ at intake. Then step 2 is the physical verification using that Android 16 Lite RT stack we just covered. Step 3 is where the data is ingested by AlloDB and Vertex AI. And finally, step 4 is the ultimate goal of this UI/UX output, the PDF documentation, specifically the highly verifiable certificate of origin. Breaking down this backend architecture really shows you the sheer power of this system. Vertex AI uses large language models to ingest thousands of pages of incredibly dense environmental regulations, like Ontario Regulation 347, and instantly maps the waste profile. Meanwhile, AlloDB serves as the centralized, high-performance backbone. Together, they replace weakened, paper-based provincial oversight with a high-fidelity, tamper-proof digital audit trail that strictly satisfies USMCA rules of origin. Ultimately, all of this generates the final output PDF documentation, the certificate of origin. This document includes labor value content certification to avoid those 25% tariff risks, specific consignee metadata tracking destinations like the contested York 1 site, Article 3 mandates tracking, and dynamic API-linked traceability maps. Basically, this comprehensive package proves the exact origin, content, and environmental standard of the shipment, completely clearing away customs friction. Section 6. The Circular Bioeconomy Future. Let's zoom back out to the macro level for a second, because this is about so much more than just moving trash across a border. By operationalizing the Google Pixel 10 Pro and the Lite RT AI stack, the 905 Wood Digital Refinery acts as the sentient bridge between chaotic waste and the highly lucrative biocarbon market. Ultimately, this architecture secures Ontario's industrial leadership in the global circular bioeconomy, establishing a dominant and totally frictionless trade infrastructure. So the crucial takeaway is how this financially rewards stakeholders while also fulfilling strict environmental mandates. By actively sorting and tracking with this level of precision, operators avoid hefty $60 per ton circle levies. It captures real-time methane reduction data from the ground up and uses that verified data to mint carbon dividends, also known as COENCs. It literally transitions waste management from being a massive, burdensome cost center into a liquid, high-margin environmental asset. Which leaves us with a final provocative question to think about. As geopolitical borders thicken and trade agreements like the USMCA face really turbulent annual reviews, will digitized AI-verified supply chains become the ultimate tariff-proof shield in the future of international trade? If the Ontario-Michigan Waste Corridor is any indication, the answer is being calculated right now, at the edge in under 500 milliseconds. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on how these transboundary technologies continue to evolve.